Good morning. My name is Jill Yoshikawa, and I'm here from Creative Marbles Consultancy with Mark Salisbury from TuitionFit and Neeta Vallab from MeritMore. We came together with a shared interest of helping families really understand the value and affordability of university educations, meeting on social media, and then starting a conversation. So we're here today to really start off a series of conversations with families, advice about the financial aid process and dispelling some myths. Good morning, Neeta.
Thank you, Jill, for that introduction. My name is Neeta. I'm a public school parent of 3 kids in New York City. In the past 3 years, we've gone through the admission cycle twice. And in the process, one of the things we've learned about is a merit aid strategy. And that's really a way for families who don't qualify for need-based aid to make college affordable. And I was able to put together a quick tool that's free for parents to use called MeritMore. And it allows people to search for colleges that could be a good merit aid fit for their student. So that's me. And Mark, off to you.
I'm smack in between the two of you, California, New York City, and the lovely Mississippi River here in Iowa. I spent 25 years working in colleges and universities and sort of watched this process from the other side of the table. And it's just sort of stunned at the degree to which the whole process makes it very difficult for families to find the schools that they really fit their price range. And the way that colleges are sort of stuck in this inability to make it better, even though they sort of know they need to. So a couple of years ago, I started a company called TuitionFit, which was really just about what if we just build the data set of actual prices ourselves. And that journey has taken me to finding the both of you out on the active coasts and starting a conversation about how do we start talking much more about affordability, about price and value as it relates to this massive decision that families all go through in trying to figure out where should they send their kids to college.
And out here in California, with Creative Marbles Consultancy for the last 18 years, I've helped guide families through the complex college admissions process and financial aid process, really seeking to find the greatest fit for their student based on their aptitude and where they can discover more about their inherent talents, as well as then move on to have economic prosperity after graduation. So today, just transitioning into our conversation today, we'd like to talk a little bit more about the difference between sticker price, which in college admissions parlance is really known as the cost of attendance, versus the real price that a family will pay out of pocket. As far as our conversation today, we wanted to address the difference between sticker price, which is known as the cost of attendance in college admissions parlance, and the real price, which is actually what families will pay. Dispelling a few myths, and then talking about what families can do to really partner in this process rather than just being seeming at the whims of the college pricing process. So Mark, if you would mind talking a little bit more about why colleges are not as transparent as they could be about pricing.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, because I think most people start with, well, why in the world would you announce a price that nobody actually pays and leave it so opaque for everyone else? And 40 years ago, that's essentially, college prices really were much more transparent. The sticker price is what most people paid. But over several decades, colleges got into this idea that they needed to make sure they got lots of applications, and the way to do that was that when they set a really high price, that suggested to the public how good of a school they were. And as a function of that, you'd get more applications. And as people who are going through this process recognize, it's a multiple stage experience. You have to get people to apply, and then you decide whether you accept them, and then you decide what kind of price you're going to get, financial aid you're going to give them. So the colleges said, well, maybe we should start setting our prices higher and higher just to get more applications. And so that began a several decade process of continually setting higher and higher prices, and then offering more and more financial aid later, and eventually created this monster where the sticker price at most schools is far above what they actually charge anybody. And the latest numbers are something like 9 out of 10 students across the country are paying something less than the sticker price.
Well, and I think to add to that, at public universities across the United States too, public subsidies through the state have been decreasing since 2009, and so families are shouldering a greater burden within paying for college as tuition has risen and costs have increased. So for families, I think what's most important to understand is the difference. What are the average discount rates, which for a college means merit scholarships and grants, which a student doesn't have to repay, so that they can start to understand the real price that they may pay versus the cost of attendance, which is the published price, which is oftentimes higher. Neeta, as a parent of a student who recently went through this process, do you have any advice for families and parents just starting this, even not just as seniors, but younger in high school?
Yeah. So, one of the first things we did is to come up with what I call the actual family contribution. So as we all know, there's the expected family contribution that the federal government issues once you've completed the FAFSA. And that's a pretty useless number for families and doesn't give a good sense of what they can actually pay. So I'm actually working with a family member this year to go through and create sort of a back of the envelope number for them. And I'll talk you through sort of how we came up with that. So the first thing to consider is any current family contribution you can make. So this should include 529s, any savings plans you have, or sort of any money you've tucked away that you want to contribute to college education. So let's say, for example, you've got $20,000 saved up. You divide that by 4, that'll give you $5,000 a year. And we're trying to come up with a number per year. And then the second factor we look at is future family contributions. So let's say the family's a little freaked out now and they're like, okay, we can put away $50 a month for the next year. So that's another $600. So now your total is $5,600. The third factor is there, do you have grandparents or any friends or family who might be able to make a contribution? So there's some new, more favorable laws going to be implemented that will make it a little bit easier for families to accept these sorts of contributions. So let's just say a grandparents can say they can give $500 a semester. So that's another $1,000, takes you to $6,600. Then you look at what a student may reasonably contribute. So we figured out if a student can work full-time over the summer for 3 months at $10 an hour, that's about $4,800. Now, it's all give or take. They may not work the whole time and they may be able to pull some money during the school year. But if we add that $4,800, that takes you to $11,400. And then the last piece that we actually feel sort of comfortable adding into this is the federal loan amount. Now, some families are going to qualify for unsubsidized and some for subsidized. And the reason we feel okay adding the federal loan amount is it's not predatory in the way many private loans are. And oftentimes you can get, sort of more favorable amounts. And generally it's an amount that students can pay back with some responsible earning and spending. So we take the freshman amount, which is $5,500, and we've added that into our total. And for the federal student loan, you get a different amount each year. It's incrementally, it increases, but we start with the freshman amount. So the total amount for this student is $16,900. Now, keep in mind that this family came out with an expected family contribution of $53,000 per year, which was absurd for them. So they're at the 16,900. This is the amount they're trying to target, try to figure out schools that will allow them, well, that will accept them, and this is their out-of-pocket per year. Since none of this is a perfect science, what we've done is we put sort of a 15% buffer on top of that. And, you know, the target price is around 19,500. So what the family should do is, as they're researching colleges and looking for options, they really want to make sure that they're not too far away from this now $19,500 per year cost of attendance. And, you know, we're going to discuss some ways in which they can figure that out. But I think if you have that amount in mind, it helps you from picking schools that are going to be out of your financial fit range, and really let you focus in on schools that are going to be affordable for you. And the benefit to that is, once you get to the acceptance process in this, that you've got some acceptances that are real financial fit for you, and you're not going to be sort of put in this corner of having to take out more expensive and burdensome loans. So that's really how a back of the envelope sort of way to calculate where you really want to, what you really want to spend each year. And so I think this is a good place for families to know where they are. But I think, you know, what you want to do in this process is also have a good understanding of what colleges are going to be charging. We know it's not going to be the sticker price for most families. So what's the next step to figure out what you might expect to pay for each college? And I think, you know, that sort of takes us to the net price calculator and some other strategies for figuring that out. Jill.
Sure, I can talk more about the net price calculators. One last comment I would add to your back of the envelope calculations is, oftentimes I'll ask families to understand what dollars out of their current budget a student already uses. How much of the grocery budget? Is it $100 a month? What are their extracurricular activities, soccer tournaments, and travel costs that go directly or attributed to that student? So they can understand, as they add those costs up, that may be additional money that they can, quote, afford out of their budget because it's already a part of their everyday spending. So perhaps the $19,500 would increase by another $5,000 a year of the expenses that a student uses, that then would just transfer along with them to their university. So it would be closer to $24,500 that the family may be able to afford as well.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So as far as net price calculators, these are tools that are typically located on a college's financial aid website. And every university is required to have one. Sometimes they are called financial aid calculators as well, so that a family can put in some limited financial information. It is all a confidential calculator. And GPA information to determine possible merit scholarships. So these are really rough estimates of what a family might expect to pay at any particular university. And there are general ones also on the College Board for families to understand what they might have to pay out of pocket in order to attend any particular school. I would always verify these numbers with completing the FAFSA and possibly even the CSS profile, depending on if the school requires both forms, as your student is a senior and applying to university. But really, that's just the start. Once families take the information that Neeta is talking about, which is their own contributions, what they believe out of their cash flow they can contribute, comparing that with what they may end up paying, really then the conversation has to move forward into, what does the student value? What is the college experience that they're seeking to gain? And is it possible at X college? And then what are they willing to pay for that? That's really the metric of the tuition, so that they can find not only the right financial fit, but actually also having a university that will serve their purposes, so that they can gain the economic prosperity and peace of mind that all students are looking for on the other side of a college graduation. So Mark, is there other data and tools that you would like to speak about as resources for families to really understand their financial fit?
I think there's a variety of different ways that people can come at this. But I think, frankly, the back of the napkin approach or back of the envelope approach is actually a pretty smart one, because anytime a tool, somebody constructs for you an algorithm, that algorithm's got some values built into it. And for everybody's personal family situation, their sense of value, their sense of what they have, the sense of what they're willing to spend and why is different. And so I think that it's really helpful to start with, what is it that we can come up with from a family standpoint to afford to pay for college, and then hold that right up against, what is it that we have or our student has as a long-term plan for college? Is it that we're really just trying to pay for 2 years of college because they're planning to go to community college? Is it that we really know that this student's probably going to go for a graduate school somewhere, and we really need to be thinking about it, not just in terms of 4 years, but in terms of 6 or 7? Those are all really important conversations to have right at the beginning. Certainly folks can look around online and find some different tools that would help you sort of craft what can we afford, what's our price range. But I really like the way that both of you have brought in that there's each family's basic calculation, just in terms of what funds are available. And then what's our sense of value, and what's our sense of, what are we spending this for?
Which I think is a really important question to answer, and where families can really gain the greatest agency is when students do their own self-reflection. Who am I and why am I attending university? What is my aptitude that I'm looking to discover more about? Are there mentors and opportunities at the university? Because then, even if the price is a bit of a stretch from what a family believes they can pay from their cash flow, they will be willing to pay that additional cost because they are more certain that a student is going to gain the value that they're seeking from that particular university experience. And that really can start early. Neeta, I had one other question for you about families having these very detailed financial discussions with their children. What advice would you give them? Because this is typically a pretty complicated conversation for families to have, and especially given the teenage parent dynamic, it can be a little bit sticky sometimes.
Yeah, try talking to a teenager about finances. That's a challenge. I think in our family, I think part of it is our kids watched us freak out a little bit when we started looking at sticker price. And it just seemed, the price seemed out of scale. And we had just very frank discussions about the price of a private education for most private schools. The sticker price is $70,000. And what does that mean in our day-to-day life? Like, where do we spend that money? I mean, we don't, but, for the kids to, they're old enough to understand what $70,000 is, or, for our state institution, $35,000. So to put it in context, they spend money, they watch us spend money. So I think having open conversations about what the price tag is, they're not too young to know what that means in real world terms. So I think having open conversations and frank conversations about this, and they came along right with us. We're like, this is a challenge. Like, this is, sticker price is not something that's doable for us. So they're in there having those discussions about how do we go about figuring out a way to make this affordable. And, as they watched us go through that process, it's like, well, is this worth paying this price? What do you expect to get out of this education? What do we expect you to get out of this education? Where do you want to be in 4 years? Is it reasonable for us to be spending this amount of money if you want to go to graduate school or don't? So, just from our perspective, it was just have frank conversations about what is it going to cost? What does that mean in terms of, things we aren't able to purchase? How does that contextually fit into other spending, and then, you know, what is it that everyone hopes to get out of that expense, really.
And I think that's a smart piece of advice, is that these are conversations, plural. This is not a one-time conversation to have. This is really building a partnership between parents and children in a way that they haven't, because children are transitioning into adulthood and parents are transitioning to being parents of adult children, not just children. And so I think for all the parents out there, as we close today, really thinking about, how do we start approaching those conversations? What is my own personal comfort talking about money and financial matters? How might that affect my children? And how can we learn about this together? Really forging that partnership as they move forward into their college years. So please look for our next in our series of conversations. Thank you, Mark and Neeta, for hosting and having us all here today. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to add them below in the YouTube comments, or see us at TuitionFit, MeritMore, and Creative Marbles. Thanks for joining us.